In this video, I want to give some tips for learning math. And you can break down the process of learning math for a class in 5 steps. By the way, this is my own personal opinion, so other people might disagree with me, but I'm just going to say what I think is true. So the first step and I'm going to assume that you're taking a class for a subject like calculus or linear algebra or differential equations or something like that, and you want some tips for how to go about learning it. So the first step is to get some exposure to what it is that you're trying to learn. So get exposed to the content. And there's lots of different ways to do that. So the traditional way is to go to a lecture. If you're taking a lecture-based class, to go to a lecture, or now it's of course very popular to watch a video, but I would also recommend reading a book because a book has a lot of content. So this would be attending a lecture, reading a book, watching a video, and that gets you exposed to the content. And then the second step is, of course, to pay attention to the main concepts and try to understand what the lecture is saying, what the videos and books are saying, right? So the second step is to try to understand the content that you're being exposed to. And most students, in my experience, do steps 1 and 2. They're going to class, they're paying attention, right? Or they're watching videos. Maybe they don't really read the book, but I would encourage them to read the book. And then they're trying to understand the content, and they do understand some of it, but the issue is what happens when there are things that you don't understand. And step 3 is to make a list of what things you're still not understanding, and then find someone who knows the answers to your questions and then ask for clarification. Ask them to help you with the things that you're still struggling with. So step 3 is to ask someone about things that you're still confused about. Now, a lot of students don't do step 3. They do steps 1 and 2, but then once they get stuck, they never ask people about the things that they're stuck on. Now, sometimes when you're confused about something, you will figure it out eventually, just over time. Or maybe it's something that you were stuck on, but after a day or two, you figure it out. So then you didn't really need to ask someone. But if it's been a few days, if it's been a week or something, and you still haven't figured out the answer to some question, or there's still something that you're not understanding, then I think it would be a good idea to ask someone without delay. Because if you don't get that sorted out, then it might interfere with your ability to learn more advanced topics. So That's step 3. So step 3 could be, how can you ask someone? Well, if your university or college has a math study center or math learning center, then that would be a place where you can find people who can help you. A teaching assistant, if your class has a teaching assistant, then that's someone you can ask. And of course, your instructor, depending on your instructor, they might be happy to answer your answer your question, but you need to ask them before they can answer your question. So this would be, in office hours or something like this. Okay? You could even consider emailing your professor or TA. Now, many professors don't respond to these kinds of emails. So office hours might be the better opportunity for that, but they might be able to answer some of your questions after class. So for instance, if you have some questions about the lecture, then maybe after the class, after the lecture is over, you can ask them if they have time. Some professors don't have time though. After one class, they have to go to the next class. They have something right after, so they don't have time to answer your question. So office hours might be the good way to go. And don't be hesitant to go seek help if you need it, because you probably will find some things confusing at some point. Okay. And one thing I see a lot of students do is once they find something that they're confused about, they go back to kind of steps 1 and 2. So they'll go back to, the video and watching more videos. And that is often not very helpful because you might not get the question answered. In general, it's much more efficient and much faster to get answers to your questions if you can find someone who can provide that personalized response. When you're watching videos, those are not personalized. The person who makes those videos, they don't know who you are, they don't know what kinds of questions you have, so it's often not the best medium for getting specific questions answered. Okay. So that's step 3. And then step 4 is you want to make sure that you're asking yourself questions about the content. Ask yourself questions about the material. And some good questions would be, how does this concept relate to a different concept? So a good question is, how is this concept that you're learning about related to another concept that you know about? Because when you're learning the content of a class, it's not like you're learning a bunch of isolated facts that you memorized. It's more like you're trying to learn a network of facts. So you have these facts that you learn, but you want to see how they are related, right? How these different concepts are related. And that's going to be much easier to remember and understand. And you'll learn more by seeing the connections between the different concepts. And it's not like every concept is directly related to another concept, but oftentimes the concepts are related. And you would want to ask yourself questions by working on problems. These could be homework problems, they could be problems in the textbook. It's often helpful actually to do more problems than the assigned homework and do extra problems from the textbook hopefully with some answers in the back so you can check if you got them right. But it's really important to work on problems to make sure that you understand. And then the last step is, of course, to review. So make sure you review every once in a while. Okay, those are the 5 main steps that you should keep in mind when you're trying to learn math. Thanks.